Hey team, it's Les. Thanks for joining me today for our very first CHOT Teachable Moments video. We're calling this first series The Experience, and what we're talking about is the CAP survey. So, if you'll remember earlier in the year, we talked about the CAP survey and the changes that were coming to it, and how we were going to be looking at that as an experience instead of strictly customer service. We're looking at the experience, and that's what the questions are asking about, the experience that the patient and the family and the caregivers had. So we're calling this the experience, how to positively affect quality scores and deliver superior care. So we're going to be looking at these questions one by one. And so we're going to start with questions 5, 6, and 7. The first few questions we're skipping because those are demographic questions. Question 5 is really the first question that gets into the meat of the survey. And question 5 says, how often did you get the help you needed from the hospice team during evenings, weekends, or holidays? So, what is that really asking? It's asking about after hours, right? So, if you're triage, if you're on call staff, think about this question. So, what can we do when someone calls in after hours? Typically, their perception is they are having an emergency. If they are having to call after normal business hours or on the weekends or on the holidays, and a lot of times when people perceive they are having an emergency, remember, perception is reality. So they're usually worked up, a little more stressed out. And so, what we want to do in those situations is try to practice calming, de escalating phone techniques. The first thing we're going to do is talk to them on the phone. So, the very first thing we can do is try to calm that situation down, be empathetic, be listening, be active listening, right? And then clearly communicate the interventions that we're telling the folks to do to help the patient out and what our follow-up plan is going to be. So that might look like, Mr. Smith, I'm going to need you to give some morphine to Mrs. Smith because she's having this excessive pain that hasn't been controlled by her normal pain medication. So we're going to do what we call a breakthrough dose, and we're going to give her some morphine. Have you done that before? Yes. Okay. Are you used to drawing up in that syringe, that half a syringe, that zero point 0.5? Yes. Okay. Well, I would like you to go ahead and give that to Mrs. Smith right now. And I'm going to follow up with you in about 15 minutes. I'm going to give you a call back and we're going to see what the situation is then, and then make that follow up call. And then, if a visit by our staff is appropriate and needed or requested, we want to communicate the ETA. So, this could be the triage nurse getting in contact with the on-call nurse and saying, "How are you? How far are you from Mr. Smith in Arlington? I'm 15 minutes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call him and tell him you'll be there in about 15 or 20 minutes." Or it might be the on-call nurse calling themselves saying, "Hey, Mr. Smith, I just plugged in your address and I'm 15 minutes away. I'm on my way." Question number 6 is, how often did the hospice team let you know when they would arrive to care for your family member? It sounds like a pretty simple thing, right? And what we'll start to see as we look at these individual questions is a lot of the questions have a common thread of communication, right? Were you communicated with? Did they let you know what would happen, when it would happen, how it would happen? So some ways we might be able to affect this, and this goes for every member of the team, right? Is if we have a standing appointment. So if this is a routine visit, let's try to schedule a day or a time for those routine visits. And what I like to do is, if I had a patient I was going to see, "Mr. Smith, I'm going to see you every Tuesday. We'll have a standing appointment, and that'll be between 9 and 11. I like to give windows so I have some leeway there. Not to give a specific time, because am I going to make it every time at 9 a.m. on the dot? Not necessarily. We live in a busy place. Lots of traffic, lots of accidents, lots of things can happen. So set some realistic goals. Communicate a reminder prior to the visit. So what I always like to do is, the day before I was going to see someone, or the morning I was going to see someone in the afternoon, I would just give them a text or a call. Remember, if you're going to text, no HIPAA information, but a text or a call saying, "Remember, we have this appointment. I'm still planning on being there between 9 and 11. And then they can respond then and say, "Oh, I forgot. I completely forgot. I scheduled an appointment for this morning. Can we move it to XYZ?" And then finally, we want to communicate our changes in ETA. So if we're not going to make that window, or if that appointment needs to be rescheduled on our end because we might have another patient that has an emergent situation that we need to attend to and might take us a little while, then we want to communicate that with our patients that are expecting us. And then finally, Question 7 is, when you or your family member asked for help from the hospice team, how often did you get help as soon as you needed it, right? So, what are some things we can do to affect this? Remember, they're asking about the hospice team, so this could be any of us. When we're informed about a request, we want to act on it and we want to communicate, right? We want to have some clear communication. So, if Mr. Smith is asking for help with an FMLA form, right? And we need to get that form filled out, assist them getting it filled out, and then maybe get it signed by a physician. We want to take in that request and then communicate what their expectations are. Obviously, if they're saying, I need this back in 20 minutes, that might be an issue, right? So we might need to negotiate that time, set some realistic expectations, but then deliver and meet those expectations. And then finally, the way we can affect this is, remember, we're a team, right? So it might be that just Mr. Smith's form is sitting at the office and needs someone to hand deliver it to him. Does that necessarily have to be the person that was responsible for getting that form filled out and dropping it off to have the physician sign? No. At that point, we're a team. Whoever is close to the office can grab that form and run it out to Mr. Smith. Remember, we're a team, and you will see as we go through these questions, they specifically ask questions about the hospice team. So we're not just picking out one discipline, an RN or a social worker or a spiritual care coordinator, or a CNA. They're asking about the whole team. Remember about this experience that they're having, and remember about this survey, that the questions they ask on this survey are asking about the perception of our care. And remember, their perception is their reality, and that is how they're going to answer those questions. And finally, little things are big, right? So sometimes things that we don't give really a second thought to, things that we go about our day doing and not really thinking about so much, the patient, the family, the caregiver, they're putting a lot of stock sometimes into those little things. So we need to make sure we are doing those little things. And communication is a huge thing that seems like a little thing. Finally, I want to end these videos with something I'm going to call fruits of your labor. And this is just that, right? The fruits of the labor of love that we do. And so I have selected just some comments. And if you'll remember on the survey, they ask a bunch of questions that are check boxes to be answered. But at the very end of the survey, they give the caregiver, the family, an opportunity to actually write in comments, and they can write in anything, right? So I want to read some of those comments to you because I'm not sure how often you guys get to hear these, right? So I picked one comment from each of our sites. So we'll start with Waco, and that quote is, "The whole team provided for and supported my family. They each had a positive impact in different ways, thanks to all the team." In Fort Worth, I have had 2 previous experiences with hospice in the past 4 years. None of those were as good as the team at Community Healthcare of Texas. Fantastic team. Cleburne, the care my mother received was wonderful. The staff was very nice and knowledgeable and answered all of my questions. They felt like family, and I would highly recommend them. And then finally, from the hospice house at Hughley, I'm very thankful for everyone who cared for my sister. I was amazed how gentle and caring everyone was with her. So when you think about what we're doing, right, sometimes we don't get to hear all the praise that people talk about. Sometimes they're talking to their neighbors or their other family members. These are specific things they wanted us to hear, and they wrote it on that survey. They took the time to do that. So kudos to you. And as I always say, thank you for everything you do for our patients, our families and caregivers, our facilities, and for one another, team. Y'all have a great day. We'll talk to you later.